I just realized my mic was muted. Has anyone been able to hear me for the last 14 minutes? Chat, can you let me know? If I was muted, then I'll start over. I could have sworn I was all set. That is extremely unfortunate if that is the case. But I do remember everything I said. It's just I feel like I was making good points. No, I was muted the whole time. Oh, that is painfully awkward. All right. That's okay. I don't know how I did that. That's okay. You were talking to a wall? No, I was talking to my screen. Okay. We'll start this over. I'm kind of surprised nobody said anything. That's all right. It's okay. It's only been like 10 minutes. I was talking to myself. That's all right. So let me start over. So, I will say I liked a lot about this chapter. There was a lot to like about this chapter. It felt more about all of these characters. So what I said in the beginning, when I was talking to myself in a vacuum, was this chapter was easily not only is it this chapter, not only were these chapters some of the best chapters in Black Clover already, but clearly they're probably the best chapters of 2024. Damn, Ouji was cooking, but nobody was hearing it. It happens. It's kind of funny though, not gonna lie. What was I gonna say? Oh, so I definitely like these chapters better than the Noel ones. Not that the Noel chapters were bad, but the Noel chapters were kind of, all about Noel for the most part. Whereas these chapters, they were kind of about everybody. Granted, there's an issue I have, which we'll get into later in the video. But, I don't know. It was generally about all of the characters, which was nice. That's obviously a huge issue in manga where, not everyone gets enough screen time. But clearly, in this fight, that was not the case. Before we get into the chapter, I do want to talk about the color page, because everyone really liked the color pages, or the color page, excuse me. And I don't want to highlight what Tabata does really well. So first, what stands out the most is the fall foliage. Excuse me. So the fall foliage, it's got not just reds and oranges, but there's different shades. There's brown leaves. There's burnt leaves. It just shows how detailed Tabata's art is. Another interesting thing about this color spread is that there's no true center. One way you can look at it is that, you have Nacht, Yami, and Ichika in the foreground, and they clearly draw your attention. But again, there's no clear center. On the one hand, Nacht draws your attention, but Yami is also in the middle, but also no character really draws the focus. I don't know. It kind of speaks to the fact that this is a team effort chapter, and no one character really stands out above the rest. One last thing I find interesting about the color spread is the position of Nacht in respect to Morgan, because Morgan is in the background, Nacht is in the foreground. Morgan and Nacht have their backs to each other. Nacht is facing or turned towards Morgan, but he also can't seem to look at him face on, which is a big hint to what happens in the chapter. So I really like what he did there. But Oh, so the last thing I wanted to say about the color spread before I move on is a lot of people were talking about like why Tabata went with the fall foliage theme. I don't really think there's any super psychological, super deep reason. I just think he's been kind of tying the color spreads, at least the last few ones, to the timing of the chapters. So if you recall, the last time we got these Jump Giga chapters was in the summer. And what do you know? If you look at the color spread for the last batch of chapters, it's a summer theme. This one comes in the fall, it's a fall theme. I feel like it's pretty self explanatory. Anyway, now that I've made up for my tomfoolery, let's try this again. So, also, since apparently I was talking to myself, friendly reminder that as I'm reviewing the chapter and leading the stream, the best way to have me answer your pressing questions is through a super chat. Not only does it support everyone else in the stream, but it also helps spread the video to everyone, and it helps support the editors so that they can make the videos look as great as they do. So what I was saying before to start, so you start chapter 374, and something to talk about. It's been a while since I've binged these chapters, but at least with the last couple of batches, the pacing feels somewhat fast. And the reason I say that is because I can't remember what happened right before the last batch, but you read the Noel fight. That's like 2 or 3 chapters, like back to back. And then you, like, at the end of that last chapter, it's like right at the end of that fight, right? And then you immediately cut to this fight. So there isn't like a huge transition. Now, again, it's been a hot minute since I've reread this batch of chapters. So it's probably not as bad as I might be concerned about, but it's definitely something to keep in the back of your mind. Sorry, I'm late. I was in the restroom. Don't worry, I was late. Sitting in my own stream with my mic muted for the first, I don't know, 15 minutes. So you didn't miss anything. Something I'll make a comment about because I saw 1 or 2 people make fun of it on Twitter, but I do want to move on. A lot of people thought it was funny how Lucius, on pages 4 and 5 of chapter 374, he says, "As former gray deer, let's take them on together." A lot of people thought that was funny because, you know, it's like kind of pretentious to be like, "Oh, we were gray deer." It's like, shut up. All right? Like, that was Julius. That wasn't you. Shut up. So then we get to one of my first favorite moments in this batch of chapters. We get the reunion of Ichika and Yami. Yami thinks he's hallucinating, but then he feels Ichika's chi. Ichika explains what's going on. So then Ichika, you know, she doesn't really know what to say. So she just says that she's sorry. She explains how she found out what really happened with her and Yami and the death of their family. She explains that she knows what Yami did and how he took the blame so that she would be okay. "You were my benefactor and I knew nothing. I resented you. I am truly sorry." So one complaint I had about this chapter, and Eddie, I'll answer your question in just a second. One complaint I had about this chapter was it felt like Ichika wasn't as big a part of the fight as the other characters. But that being said, Tabata does make up for it with the fact that, like, one of the most emotional moments in these chapters is her reconciliation with Yami. I think it's short and sweet and to the point, and it's done in a wholesome way. So I really like it. I thought Tabata killed it. Ouji, can Black Clover author end up same fate other authors ending, especially Backlash? No. People have already tried to bash on Black Clover's ending. Obviously, the previous arc has its issues, but that's not the final arc. This is the final arc, and honestly, I'm loving every second of this final arc. From all the Lucius stuff and that plot twist to going to the land of the sun, and now all of this stuff now. Is it perfect? No, but it's much more consistent and much more in character than the stuff in My Hero Academia, and especially Jujutsu Kaisen. What else did we have? Yami and Ichika reunion. Been waiting for this moment. Dude, it was so good. It was so good. And then, of course, we got to see them fight together. But we'll talk about that. So then we get to see how Yami sort of left things off with Ryu. Which to me felt like a parallel to Asta again, because we see how Yami and Ryu have this sort of rivalry thing going on. It's not a strict rivalry because they are rivals in a way, but they're more like pals than they really are rivals. It's not like him and the captain of the Golden Dawn. So then we get to pages 12 and 13, and we see that Yami... this is not the last chapter, no. We get to pages 12 and 13. We see that Yami has this big X-shaped scar on his chest. And right away, I was like, you know, this kind of feels like Asta. This is reminding me of Asta. Granted, I know the whole X marks the spot thing on the chest is 100% a Luffy thing. But I saw the scar and I was like, this feels like such an Asta moment. And then what do you know? As soon as I said that to myself, we get this demon transformation. But obviously what happens is we get the demon soul pill. Ichika explains that, in fact, this is the same one that led to the tragedy of the Tsukihiro family, or the Yami family. Crap, what's their family name? Oh no, it's Tsukihiro. Anyway, so she explains it's the same pill that led to the tragedy of her family. She explains that it was Ryu that instructed her to give it to Yami without really telling her what it was. And Yami says, oh, I get it. So this is like a sign. This is like him saying, oh, I can handle it. I know that you're stronger than before, which I think is such a cool moment. It highlights that, like Asta and all the other characters, Yami is constantly growing. He is a strong character, but he's just as flawed as the other characters. And, you know, like his catchphrase, he's always going beyond his limits. And then we get, not a retcon, but like a new perspective on the Demon Soul pill. They explain that it doesn't necessarily drive you crazy. It just raises your power and your healing factor. So if you can control it, you don't go crazy. Juan wants to know, did I watch episode 7 of Dandadan? No, but I saw clips, and from what I saw, the animation in today's episode seems to be movie level. Seems to be like Studio Ghibli, like movie level animation. Again, have not seen the episode, but it looks absolutely gorgeous. It seems like they killed it with that episode, because that was an episode that needed to really strike home to new fans how emotional Dandadan is, and that it's not just some meathead shonen. And it seems to have done that. So, question to chat. I'll put a poll. So, question to chat. What do we think of Yami's demon god form? Does it pass the vibe check, or is it kind of lame? Because people seem split. People seem to either love it, or they think it's super lame. And I'm kind of curious what everyone thinks. All right, so far, people seem to say it is passing the vibe check. That's one vote, though. What does everyone think on the Yami demon god form? I think it's pretty dope. Admittedly, it's definitely not the best form we've seen in Black Clover. However, I think it looks really cool. I mean, it's dope, but it's Yami we're talking about. Yeah. I think what saves my criticism of it is that it's not like a true transformation like Devil Union. It's like I'm trying to think of a good parallel. It's like a pseudo transformation, I guess, because Yami isn't doing anything himself to transform. He's taking the pill. So if it were like, oh, hey, I unlocked this new form through training, and then it was this, I'd be a little more critical. Some things to note. I like that he has like the necklace of beads, kind of like the Akuma like Buddhist prayer beads thing going on. He also has the wristband thing going on, which Asta has the same thing, right? He has like the wristband sort of motif from when he made his contract with oh my god. That's gonna kill me now that I don't know this. Lieb. That's his name. GG. So another thing I'll point out, and I definitely don't think this is on purpose, but it's a possibility. I'm probably the only person who thinks that Yami's horns in the demon god form make him look a little bit like Dante, which is kind of ironic. And then one last thing I'll point out for any cultured Dragon Quest fans. The 3 blonde streaks, so to speak, in his hair are suspiciously similar to the hair design of Dai, his Ryu Majin form in Dragon Quest The Adventure of Dai. So this form, while not the most visually stunning, does have a lot packed into it. And so for that reason, I have to kind of respect it. So obviously this first chapter is really good, and it's got a ton going on. So then we go to chapter 375. Thank you, Carlos, for the sub. Always appreciate that. So that was what we can categorize as the Yami and Ichika chapter. So then we cut to the next chapter, and we cut back to Nacht fighting Morgan. We are reminded the one who's controlling him is Lucifugus, which is a ridiculous name, but that is the name. He tries to convince himself that's no longer Morgan. I'll defeat him right along with Lucius's clone, even if it kills me. We get a ton of union forms from Nacht, and ironically, this like random one on pages 2 and 3 is the coolest looking one. But we'll get into that later. We get a crazy spread on pages 4 and 5. A lot of the spreads in these chapters were not like the most visually stunning we've seen in Black Clover, but everything was consistent. Nothing was really like super over the top, but it was all very consistent. Which, if you put a gun to my head and said, you know, would you rather have like one page that looks really dope and then every other page looks like trash? Or would you have everything look, you know, pretty cool and like it all look pretty cool? I'd take the latter option. So of course Morgan sees that Nacht is feeling pretty burdened by all this. But then Yami jumps in, cuts down the Lucius clone. And then Lucius points out, and this is definitely fuel for all the power scalers. He says, Morgan is stronger than both of us now. Which seems to be the case, but we'll talk about that. So, for anyone who goes hard on Black Clover power scaling, this seems to pretty much cement the fact that Paladin Morgan is stronger than Demon God Yami, than Ichika, and Nacht. Which, Nacht and Ichika I can understand, but stronger than Demon God Yami is pretty wild considering how strong Yami is supposed to be. So it kind of speaks to like how busted all the paladins are. But of course it does sort of set up the teamwork in the later part of the chapters. So then blah blah blah. So Nacht keeps trying to convince himself that, you know, he has to do this. He has to stop Morgan. But he's like, I can't do it. I already killed my brother once. I can't kill him again. So just like the first chapter was very vulnerable for Yami and Ichika, this chapter is one of the most vulnerable moments we've ever seen for Nacht. Obviously, we saw him get pretty vulnerable in the previous arc, but this is like the cap on his character arc where he finally confronts his trauma with his brother. So then, of course, Yami does his usual Yami thing, steps in, helps Nacht. Nacht points out that Yami defeated the Lucius clone rather fast. So then, of course, Yami starts teasing Morgan. He's like, does this look like any time to cry, you rich kid loser? And he tries to, you know, give him a motivational speech, and Nacht says, I know. So something I really like about this scene and this whole chapter and then the following one is that it reminds us and highlights why Yami is such a good leader and mentor. So Nacht is like buried in self-doubt, and Yami just says, "Are you planning to let Morgan kill people?" So, one, this shows that Yami knows exactly what's going through Morgan's head. And two, as we see in this scene, he's able to direct that self-doubt in a constructive way. Because he's like, well, I'm not just going to ignore the obvious. So let me explain like why he can't just sit here and do nothing. Which is what he says. He says, well, if you do nothing, then you're just going to let your brother, you know, get ruined anyway. Because you either stop him or you let him kill everyone, and then, you know, you're kind of a loser brother for doing that. Which in a way is harsh, but it does motivate Nacht to do what he needs to do. So then he says, you chose to shoulder that sin for the rest of your life. Remember, you've got to be the one to stop him. But then he says, man, you're pathetic. You're all freaked out because you're by yourself. So here I am. We'll fight him together. This is another reason I love Yami so much. This is a big reminder that throughout the story, he is always fighting side by side with the other characters. So in the first fight against Licht, what was he doing? He was fighting side by side with Asta before the captains stepped in. When they go to the water temple, he doesn't step in right away, but Yami does step in to help the other characters. Obviously, he helps in the fight against the devil at the end of that elf arc. And then in the next arc, when the Dark Triad shows up, we get probably the most iconic moment in the whole manga where he fights side by side with Asta against Dante. So Yami, like, he is a leader and he is a mentor, but he doesn't just, like, you know, command and tell people what to do. Like, he fights alongside everyone, and it makes him an incredibly charming and charismatic character. Can't imagine this series without Yami, dude. As much as I love Black Clover, and as much as most of the characters are my favorite character, Yami is definitely a huge part of Black Clover. Like, there's a few characters that carry, so to speak, and Yami is definitely one of those characters. Like, if you take out Yami, this story would still be good, but not nearly as cool. So then, of course, Yami says basically what is going through Nacht's head. He says, the one who makes me sick is Lucius. I knew you, Morgan. This isn't you. So the best I can do is put you back down so you can rest in peace. And then we get a really cool, what I think should have been a double spread, but still a cool panel on the final page of chapter 375. And then we get to chapter 376. So, it opens with, I always have the same dream. Somebody asked, I can't remember, are there any paladins left? I believe there's one or two more. So they killed what's his name, the scientist, that was Mero Leona, I believe, killed him. Excuse me. Noelle killed her mother, which, sounds so heroic. She killed her mother. Yami and his crew just stopped Morgan. So I think there's like one or two more left. I'm probably wrong. It's like I said, it's been a hot minute. But anyway, it opens. I always have the same dream. I join the Grey Deer too. Yami and I fight over Morgan, and Morgan just smiles the way he always did. When I wake up, I despair. And then it cuts to the present. So Yami and Morgan are fighting. Morgan says, he granted me absolute magic and this power. It drags everything in and swallows it. That's what dark magic does best. My own magic is light and dark. Using this magic of creation, I will clear the way to the ideal world. Yeah, so Morgan is kind of busted, not gonna lie. Like, I'm talking like Stern Ritter level busted. I will say the paneling in this chapter, and maybe the other chapters, but specifically this chapter, is a little weird. But, that's not necessarily strange to Black Clover. We have seen some weird paneling already. So then Ichika walks up next to Nacht. She says, I don't know much about your relationship to my brother. She explains what she heard from Asta, and she says even in a foreign land he knew nothing about, he inspired all sorts of people. Again, reminding us like what a great mentor and leader Yami is. So then we get this line from Ichika, I almost made my brother shoulder everything by himself again. I can't possibly just stand by and watch as if I were some tragic princess. So what I liked about the way Tabata handles Ichika in these chapters is first we get Yami's growth, where we see him grow in the sense that before he had to take everything on and then sort of like push everyone away, which we kind of see him do multiple times. But now we see that he's grown because now he can fight and then ideally be strong enough to like still keep everyone together. But now Ichika is saying this time it's going to be different. This time I'm not just going to let him do this on his own. And by saying this, incidentally, this inspires Nacht to do the same thing. Because Yami has this track record of, fighting with everyone, but he doesn't fight their battles for them. He helps them. And this kind of this speech from Ichika reminds Nacht of that Yami isn't just going to fight your battles for you. Like, it's a team effort. And that's kind of what I think snaps him out of it. So Ichika joins together with Yami. We get this really cool dark combo spell, Black Heavens. Now, what I thought was kind of weird, but I think it was supposed to be funny on purpose, is Yami says, we may not look alike, but our Yojutsu and magic sure do. I thought it was funny that he said that because obviously, Yami is very manly and Ichika is very girly, but I feel like they're two of the most similar looking characters in the manga. Minus like the Silva siblings. But again, I think that's supposed to be funny. I don't think that's supposed to be taken seriously. So anyway, they're fighting. And this spread right here on pages 12 and 13, I think this is actually one of the better looking ones. I really like the perspective there. So then we cut to Nacht. I was trying to take the easy way out, telling myself I could die any time. Tears don't mark the end of a sin. Basically saying, it doesn't matter how crappy I feel about my mistakes. That doesn't make up for what I did. Which I think is a really, really cool moment for him. So then we get what I'm guessing is the combination of all of his devil forms. And I'm not going to lie. So I can't remember if he used this form in the previous arc. I don't think so, but it does look vaguely familiar. But I'm not going to lie. In this form, kind of lame. Like Yami's form, I think looks really cool. Nox's form here, this new one, where it's the union of 1, 2, 3, 4 devils, kind of lame. Interesting comment from Morgan. He says, "You're the one with the greatest talent for magic." So there's two ways to interpret that. He could be talking about, well, three ways. He could be talking about out of the trio here. He could be talking about between him and his brother. Or he could be talking about both of those things. But it is interesting that Morgan says that when he is clearly such a busted character. One of the cooler spreads we get is this one on pages 16 and 17. Dark cross shadow magic. I thought that was a really cool spread. You know, not exactly super detailed, but there's definitely a lot going on in there. We do get a cool moment for Morgan on pages 18 and 19, showing that he's not just some brainless fodder, but that a fraction of his personality is in there. There's a fraction of him from the past of like wanting to create a better future. And then we get this really cool quote that I'm not sure who starts it, but it does end on a cool note. "The brighter the light, the deeper the shadow it casts." And then, of course, we get a really cool spread where, you know, they murder the ever-living F out of Morgan. And we get a really nice panel of Nacht when he says, "Goodbye, Morgan. I will shoulder this pain forever." It's a interesting way Tabata draws his face, because there's clearly pain, there's clearly fatigue, suffering, but it's not like sad completely. There is like a hint of relief, a hint of hope in the way he draws his face. Another example of why Tabata is one of the best character artists in manga. So we got 14 votes. The final result is that Yami's demon god form does in fact pass the vibe check. So I'll ask everyone in the chat, what would we rate the last three chapters? 10 out of 10? 8 or 9? 6 or 7? A 5? What are we thinking? I haven't seen a single person say anything bad about these chapters. So I can't imagine anyone giving them a 5, but especially anything less than a 5. I would probably give these chapters like an 8 out of 10. I think they're really good. I think Nox, again, I can't remember if he already used this form, but his form in the last chapter is just sort of okay. I kind of wish Ichika was a bigger part of the fight. While the art in these chapters was very consistent, I didn't think that it was some of like the craziest, like most hype pages we've seen from Tabata. So yeah, I thought it was a really good chapter. The fight was pretty good, not as crazy as the Noelle stuff. But again, I also liked these chapters better than the Noelle chapters. Eddie said 8 is a fair score. Yeah, I think 8 is good. I could see someone saying like a 9. I definitely don't think they're 10. 7, I could see. 6 is harsh, but reasonable. I think if you give it a 5 or anything less, you're kind of cooked. Like, you're kind of fried. You're definitely smoking something. So Justin said 8 out of 10. Yeah, I think everyone kind of generally agrees. It's like an 8 out of 10. But what's not necessarily an 8 out of 10 is what's shaping up as the end of Black Clover, which gets into the title of the stream. Black Clover might have the best ending out of these newer Jump manga. I mean, everyone memes on Black Clover, especially the recent arc, right? Like, everyone memed on the Lucius plot twist. Everyone memed on the whole going to the Land of the Sun. A lot of people thought that was just like a cheap knockoff of, you know, Wano in One Piece. And a lot of people are like, oh, this final arc sucks. It's lame. It's just him recycling all of the same stuff. But clearly, as we're seeing, it's some of the best moments in Black Clover. Everything is very in character. Tabata's doing a great job of fleshing out the characters, adding to the character dynamics, delivering really cool forms and really cool fights. Is any of it like revolutionary? Not necessarily, but it's consistent, it looks good, it's entertaining, and it's fun. And honestly, that's more than I can say for a lot of the stuff in the final chapters of Jujutsu Kaisen, and it's definitely a hell of a lot more than I can say about the ending of My Hero Academia. Naruto ability OBS. I'm not really sure what you mean by that. So out of like My Hero and Jujutsu Kaisen, like the big sort of current gen Jump manga. Oh, power sharing at battle. Yeah. But I mean, let's be honest. So many other manga have done that at this point. That's not really unique to Black Clover. I mean, My Hero Academia did it in a way. I think the fact that Tabata is in Jump Giga and he has more freedom and more time to cook with these chapters, I think Black Clover is going to benefit from moving from Weekly Shonen Jump to Jump Giga. I think we've already seen that. I think we've definitely seen an increase in consistency. I will admit that you know, Tabata hasn't necessarily escaped some of the issues of writing a final arc where, like, you know, the pacing kind of comes and goes. And then especially like with this chapter, for example, the paneling is kind of crazy. Although, truth be told, the paneling is definitely a lot better than in One Piece, right? Where One Piece has these crazy big arcs, and Oda's just like, yeah, paneling is just not going to be a thing for the next 50 chapters. Really not seeing so much of that in Black Clover. So, this was not just a great moment for Yami, Nacht, Ichika, and even Morgan, but these chapters show that this final arc is shaping up to be, out of the like current gen group of manga. So we can throw My Hero in the ring. We can throw Jujutsu Kaisen. We can even, if we really want to, which is only fair, for free time, sure. Again, Eddie, I'm not really sure what you mean by that. You're talking about the Jump Giga thing. Yeah, more free time. So out of My Hero, Jujutsu Kaisen, and Demon Slayer, I would say so far, I don't know about the best. I think it's way too early to say the best. But so far, Black Clover has the most consistent ending out of any of those manga, pardon me. So let me put it up to chat. Which do we think at this stage, because granted, Black Clover is still pretty early, we don't know how much longer it has, but at this stage, who do we think has the better ending? So again, if you ask me, I don't think Black Clover necessarily has the best ending. It's definitely way too early. And if we're being honest, I think these other manga have some bigger peaks than what we're seeing in this arc. That being said, this arc feels a lot more consistent. I think the only real big contender is probably between Jujutsu Kaisen or Demon Slayer. With Jujutsu Kaisen, it was very touch and go. Like, some chapters would be amazing, and then other chapters would be complete ass. And especially with the last two chapters, it was kind of all over the place. But again, Black Clover is not at that point yet. Then you get to Demon Slayer, which honestly, minus all the stuff with Muzan, that final arc is an amazing final arc. My only real problem with the final arc of Demon Slayer, and I won't say any more for anyone who's anime only, I really just don't like the Muzan fight. Other than that, all those other final fights are awesome. I think they're all great. And I also like the transition into that final arc. I just don't like the Muzan fight. I think it's ass. I like all the fights that build up to that. And I like the last chapter or so following that fight. I friggin' hate the Muzan fight. And, you know, if you say anything bad about that fight, you're a Demon Slayer hater. but watch how many people say exactly what I just said as soon as that comes out in the anime. Watch the 360, watch the flip when that comes out, and people try to sound original. Like me and so many other manga fans have already been saying. Wow, interesting. So 0 votes for My Hero, 0 votes for Demon Slayer. It is entirely between Black Clover and JJK. We only have 4 votes right now. Can we get like 5, 6 more votes? Listen, My Hero. I love My Hero. But if we're keeping it real, if we're keeping it a $1.50, My Hero's ending was not the best. It was certainly, in theme. It was consistent with its themes, but the execution was duty. I'm going to give it 3 more seconds if somebody wants to throw in a final vote for which manga has the best ending so far. Black Clover, My Hero, Jujutsu Kaisen, or Demon Slayer. 3, 2. Oh, we got 5. Oh, another one for Black Clover. All right. So yeah, people are loving Black Clover. I love to see it. That's really all I have to say about these chapters. Obviously, like I said, I've already recorded a video about Yami that will be coming out maybe tomorrow, but probably Saturday. But my last question for everybody in these last few minutes is Eddie, you're saying Demon Slayer? Dude, where were you? I had the poll up for so long. I had that poll up for like a solid 5 to 10 minutes. You gotta vote, man. But my last question for everybody in these last few minutes is, what do we see happening in the next batch of chapters? Because obviously, for the last month or two, I've been like, what the hell are we going to see next? Somebody asked, how many paladins do we have left? If there's any paladins left, I think what will most definitely happen is we just cut right to the next paladin fight. But I can't remember. You're the 5th person? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So you bring up a good point. I'm kind of surprised that nobody voted for Demon Slayer. My Hero, I can kind of understand, to be honest. But nobody voted for Demon Slayer? That's crazy. So if there's any more paladins left, that will probably, because I'm trying to think. We got Noelle and her crew. Did the Black Bulls crew get a fight yet? Like, did Magna get a big fight? I think he did. I can't remember. I don't know if there's anyone else of like our crew. Yeah, I think they got all. There might be like 1 or 2 more, but I think they pretty much got all the paladins. I think we may see the aftermath of the fight with Yami and Ichika. Then we will switch to maybe Asta and Yuno. That is a strong possibility. But again, if you recall, the last batch was all the Noelle stuff. And the last chapter of that batch was like the very end of that fight. There was like 0 aftermath. It was just fight and then, okay, the fight's done. And then you cut from that final chapter to this batch, and it just goes from one fight straight into the next one with 0 transition. not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but, you know, if you're not rereading everything, it can seem a bit disorienting. But yeah, something along those lines of either fighting the last paladin or so, and then hopefully we get some screen time with Asta and Yuno. But on that note, that's really all I have to say about the chapter. Again, I'm genuinely pleased to see how these chapters turned out. I think they were awesome. I think they were the best Black Clover chapters of the year. Thankfully, we don't have to wait too much longer for the new batch. I think I'll have to go back and reread the last 30 chapters. It's been a while. That's what I'm saying. Like, when I reread the whole end of the raid arc, and then like the Lucius twist, and then the Land of the Sun, that all those chapters were like, it just flowed so much better than reading it weekly. So I highly recommend that. I'm probably gonna do that myself in December or January, because as far as I know, Jump Giga does not come out until January. Do you think the Asta and Yuno fight needs to be long? I don't know about long, but it needs to get like some time. Like, it can't just be like 3 chapters. I think it's got to be like close to 5. I don't know. I can't put like a number on it, but like Tabata's like, he's got to kill that shit. 2026 return? Are you talking about the anime? Because the next batch would be 2025. Speaking of the anime, I have no idea when that shit is coming back. I don't know what the hell they're gonna do with that. Hopefully it comes back when they're done with Bleach 1000 Year Blood War. But again, fingers crossed, because I have no idea. So yeah, that's it. Great chapter. Best chapters of the year as far as Black Clover. Great moment for all of these characters, especially Yami. And that is pretty much it. Make sure to look out for the Black Clover video this weekend. There will also be a Bleach video, so keep an eye out for that as well. Thanks to everybody who showed up for the stream. I had a lot of fun talking about the chapters. Hopefully you had fun chatting about the chapters. And yeah, thankfully we don't have to wait too long, because I think Jump Giga comes back in January, but we will see. Again, thank you so much. This was another fantastic discussion with a lot of great input. Until next time, I look forward to hearing from all of you soon. Peace.